Well, I think sustainability is something we all have to take responsibility for, so it's not an oxymoron in that sense, and certainly corporates engaging in that dialogue is essential, but it's been a mixed bag. There's no doubt about that. There are some really good examples of corporate social responsibilities, but all too often it's been a PR exercise. In 2005, the world took an optimistic turn when the UN acknowledged that the trickle-down theory hadn't worked, that we were seeing greater divides within and across nations, and that fair globalisation, and that's what we're talking about here, a sustainable globalisation that is fair, that it required full employment and decent work being defined by the ILO as having a guarantee, underwriting it of labour rights, but fairly and squarely in that CSR context, then potentially there's a win-win for everybody. But it will require people to think more deeply, to take their responsibilities seriously, not just for their own direct employees and their communities they serve, but right down through the supply chains.
These are first steps for some global companies in recognizing their global responsibilities, and they do provide an opportunity for global unions like UNI and others to engage with companies about their global responsibilities. There's probably not a week that goes by that I'm not in contact with some global employer regarding their contract employees in some remote country where they've all been fired for wanting a union, or they're not paid overtime, or whatever the exploitation of the week may be. And many times the CSR policy offers at least an opening in the door to have a reasonable discussion. And many times these employers will engage to fix the problem. So on that level, I see it as a first step towards acknowledging a broader set of responsibilities, some value in terms of having a dialogue. And I think for US employers, and coming from that background, I think there's a bit of a narrow view for the unions as well about the fact that, yes, in fact, there is an international framework of laws that do establish freedom of association as an international human right.
I think the question now is the current approach sustainable? Can we continue to spend $60 billion a year for limited results? And some of the key corporations share our point of view. For example, Gap and Nike, two US corporations, have both said the current approach, and that is the sort of social audit approach, is not sustainable in the long term. And what we need is to give responsibility back to the workplaces and to have that overseen through mature systems of industrial relations. I think that actually means empowering those involved in supply chains, the local suppliers, their workforce, but it also means drawing in national governments to provide the regulatory framework that will provide for good industrial relations. I think that's CSR Mark II, and that's what we're working towards at the moment. And the Better Factories program, in simple terms, began to work to raise standards within the industry, not just to carry out, in a sense, audits or inspections, but also to assist the industry to develop, to meet the standards, and also to work to improve productivity, quality, the ability to deliver on time. That agreement, I think, was very successful in that it encouraged the Cambodians, manufacturers and workers, to look to the future and to see how they could develop an industry that would be viable, profitable, stable, and internationally competitive.